All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our first episode of Power of Girlhood TV Live. Yes. And I am so excited about launching this initiative. And so, for those of you who are not familiar with the Power of Girlhood, we are an organization, sponsored project under Allied Media, which is a 501c3, creating media for a more just world. So, super excited to be part of that family. Our organization is dedicated to helping to support girls between the ages of 8 and 18 move through the process that we call girlhood. And one of the things that we really like to focus on with our girls is identity. Who are you? Not who society wants you to be, not who your family wants you to be. Innately, who are you? And so one of the things that we like to continue to work on with our girls is the power of voice. And so what better way to talk about voice than to have an activist, strategist, creative, all the things, right? To help inspire girls and hopefully you, the viewer, to amplify and use your voice. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest, Rasha. And Rasha, if you could tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do and how you use your voice every day.
Woo! Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I hope that in these times that you are finding ways to really take care of yourself and definitely feel I want to know how I can support you in that. And these times are heavy and these are not new times, right? These are just times that are underscoring the reality of this racist system that continue to enforce anti-Blackness institutionally, structurally, and even interpersonally within some of our own communities, and how that's translated into police brutality, our policies, our practices. So really, I just want to start off by saying I'm so humbled to be here with love, solidarity, and a lot of rage right now for me personally in what's happening to our Black community and what has been happening. So thank you so much. Yes, so my name is Rasha Mubarak, and I am so humbled by everything that you do, your whole organization, your platform, everything you are standing for, and ensuring that the future of Black and brown girls, or girls that don't have that platform, are trying to understand the platform on how to ensure that their voices or communities are centered. And so I really want to thank you and everything that you do. Yeah. Snaps.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I live in Florida. I am a Palestinian Muslim, born in Brooklyn, New York. I don't claim my New York card too much. I always just say, I'm a happy Floridian enjoying that sunshine, unless you get my Brooklyn blood pumping, which is quite often these days, right? So yes. Imagine living in Florida where there's a lot of racism, sexism, anti-Blackness, Islamophobia. It's interesting. So it's been an interesting realm in this world of activism. So really where my work has come from is being deeply rooted in the Palestinian struggle and liberating the Palestinian people and making sure that we are fighting for human rights globally. And that's inclusive of all struggles, all injustices. So that's where really my work started off as a young person trying to navigate and understand what was happening to my people. And early on, I understood you naturally think that folks are gonna do what's right and understand what's wrong is wrong. But the reality, as we can see in this day and age and all the years that came before us, is that that's not it, right? And I've always been a movement person, being in the streets, mobilizing, demonstrations, and to where I started to learn and understand that it takes all of the avenues, right? It takes all the protests, the demonstrations, it takes from the courtrooms to the media rooms, right? Like it's also and policy, right? And and the electoral process. Like, I don't believe the electoral process alone will liberate us at all. I think it's just one of the components that will lead us to equity and freedom. So how do we, navigate this world of all these avenues? Because it's exhausting, being a woman of color. Like, we have to fight so many times harder than the white man to get even in these spaces, or even in these progressive spaces, we're many times marginalized, right? And so, but for me, it's like I felt like I had no choice. If I wanted to center the voices of my communities, I had to be in all these spaces to what naturally and organically, where you pick up how to be in the media room, or how to write a press release, or how to organize, or how to mobilize. So I wanted what happened in 2018 and stopped me, because I feel like, is that I was working for several progressive organizations. And even in progressive spaces, it was like, can you turn down like your Palestinianness? And it's like, I can't stop being Palestinian, nor do I want to, right? Mm-hmm. And understanding, really truly understanding that, liberation and freedom is only going to come when we are fighting for each other, like every bone in our body. And so unbought power comes from our sister Shirley Chisholm, who has paved the way, like many Black women have, for so many Black and brown women to come after them. So I wanted to uplift her and say that we can achieve those things if we are unbought. Even in these progressive spaces, when folks are like, children don't belong in cages, like, that's human. But when we hear about, AOC saying something like, I don't care if you're Mexican or Palestinian, children don't belong in cages, and really naming, what it means to be progressive and what it means to be a loud liberal. Even now, the conversation about photo ops in these protests, right? Like, so just, that's where really unbought power is drawing a line in the sand and saying, no, I'm not going to leave one person behind, one community behind, one group behind, because one is far too many. That's and right. So really trying to build that power unbought.
Yeah. So I just want to go back, because unbought power, and I even want to unpack that a little bit, because sure. Our girls are 8 to 18, so I really want to contextualize that for them. What does that really mean to be unbought? I think you froze there just a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you anymore.
Yeah, what does that mean to be unbought?
What does it mean to be unbought? It means to...
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yes. Was your question, what does it mean to be unbought? You cut out. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So
yes, that's it.
It, again, like going back to Shirley Chisholm, she was the first Black woman that was elected into Congress, and she ran for president, and she did it in a way that was authentic and was not compromising her values. She used her space and her platform to ensure she was fighting for Black people, fighting for women, specifically Black women, and not taking corporate money, not, affiliating with groups or organizations of corporate America, big money, all of that, ensuring that she was grassroots, ensuring that she was representative of the people's issues. And for me, that's how it translates with me, is that, to truly be free and liberated and achieve equity for people is to make sure, one, we're doing it in light of the civil rights movement and uplifting Black people. And then comes all of us with Indigenous people, Palestinian people, undocumented folks, queer folks, all of the injustices. And it's, I can't be okay with one injustice, right? So for me, it's like entirely unbought, right? And unapologetic. And there, you can't practice any kind of complacency in any of it, and really understanding how do we be, when you're an ally and when you're on the front line, and ways to support and making sure you're uplifting. In spaces, they say a lot of progressives, we call them PEPs, right, which is progressive except on Palestine. But we also have what we call POOPs, which is progressive only on Palestine. So just making sure that we embody and understand the disparities and equities in all communities, and how do we uplift that. So for me, that's what Unbought means. And that, you know, and the young people, like this age group, I'm learning so much from them, right? And I'm hearing about the training, some of the work that I'm doing. And I'm like, I want to be in this space, not because I want to do a training, but I truly learn from them.
I want to be in this space, yeah.
Right?
They're so wise. I mean, the things that they think of and ideas and concepts, I'm like, I never would have thought of that. They know everything. Yeah, we should just give the world to them. Like here, you just take it because we have messed this thing up. So here, you just take it, you run it.
Honestly, there have been so many times where, you know, there are times where we feel disenchanted, right? I mean, a lot. And then you hear them or you see their fight, and, you know, especially Black and brown girls right now, like, first of all, they are the ones winning elections and making real change and impact. And it's like, when I see that, I feel like, you know, our future is all right. But also it's our responsibility to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to set them up as much as we can. Because even if we don't see it in our lifetime, like the work we do now should be able to happen from years and years to come. I think the work that you're doing that's why it's so important, so critical. And that's where we need to really invest in. That's where the power is, and where we actually gain meaningful work in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, deeply. And so I just even want to, if you could elaborate more on the Palestinian identity. So where is Palestine and in the world, because, you know, our babies are still learning geography in many spaces. So if you can tell our audience where Palestine is. And I know that this is a sensitive area and it's very touchy. The Palestinian-Jewish relationship has been a very tenuous one. So if you can even just elaborate and share a little bit more context too.
Yes, absolutely. So Palestine, I always ask people, do you know Jesus? And they're like, I know Jesus. And I'm like, I'm from where Jesus was born, right? And so, you know, Palestine is in the Middle East. It became Israel after 1948, where Palestinians were pushed out, and they are still living under occupation under Israeli forces. So just to touch on, you know, the relationship between Palestinians and the Jewish community, is that it's not about, you know, the Jewish people in the sense that what they're doing is wrong. It's the Israeli occupation. In fact, so many Jewish people are in solidarity with the Palestinian movement. So it's not representative of the Jewish faith, right? It's representative of oppressive forces that continue to build off suppression and oppression and occupation of a people. So in fact, you know, before 1948, Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived peacefully in Palestine. They cohabitated. They still marry each other. They build businesses together. They used to farm together. You still till this day, you hear the adhan, which is a call to prayer at the masjid, the church bells, the synagogues, all of that. But now it's under occupation, and to where one demographic is being racially discriminated against, to where they're forced out of their homes. Refugees don't have a right of return. What's interesting is that there's so much parallel that, you know, when Ferguson happened, first of all, the Palestinian movement and the Black liberation movement has been deeply embedded before our times, right? It's not new. But when Ferguson happened, and, you know, Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza were teaching the Ferguson protesters on Twitter how to combat the tear gas, and because it's the same forces that are right now being used. And it's interesting because so many law enforcement agencies from America get trained by Israeli forces. So, the tactic that was used on George Floyd is, it's a graphic image and video going around. It's something we see in Palestine happen to our Palestinian men, Palestinian children, is these same tactics that are used, that the same ones that are funded by the same oppressive forces. So for us, it is interesting how it parallels. Even the wall that's trying to be built is the same. It's supported by the same wall in Palestine. So like it's crazy how even in the indigenous fight, all of these fights resonate with the Palestinian movement, because this is something that we all that they face in Palestine. So I think that that's why it's so important to have these conversations, because the struggles are different, but how do we support each other and understand that we are oppressed by the same systems, and how it's translated, and how do we protect, right? So when we're talking about mass incarceration of Black people in the States, right, it's the same, in Palestine, when young boys are detained at 12 years old at 3:00 in the morning because allegedly throwing a rock at a U.S. Paid tank in Israel. It's not so much that they believe that this young boy threw a rock, or that it's so criminal. It's the fact that it's a system that's used to dismantle and destroy the dreams of Black and brown boys and girls and children, in feeling that they aren't valuable, or they don't deserve a good education, or feel that they should go into a career they don't feel worthy. And I think that's like the conversation folks sometimes lack to have, like, what is these institutional racism and how does it work,
Yes. And I think you so eloquently pointed to how it works, like, even though we label it something different here in the States, but I think it's also, I love that you lifted up that it's a system as opposed to people. They marry, they work together, they build together, they love together, they fight together, they stand for one another. And I think that that's the thing that we really want to drive home to our girls, is that the infighting between each other, that's never the solution. No. And the infighting that you have, whether it's because we have girls of color, whether you're light skinned or dark skinned, we still are in 2020 having a conversation about good hair, good and bad hair. Like, what is that? Well, where does that invisible power, or like, where does that come from? And I love that you named a system. White male patriarchy is responsible here, but it's another name, but it's still that same oppressive power that we have to undo. And what was it, Audre Lorde, that said that we will never dismantle the oppressor's house with his tools. So we have to dig deeper into compassion, empathy, love, the value of self and voice and agency, and lift each other up. Because any woman, I don't care who she is, and I really want to drive this home to our girls, it doesn't matter. Because here's the thing, if you see another sister who is down and depressed and suffering from anxiety, you are down and depressed and suffering from anxiety. So what do you do to support her? What do you do to love on her? Because here's the thing, change might be different.
I just want to like hug you right now, just because it is just so, it's just so much.
Well, who are you? I mean, like attracts like. So I just, am so in awe of how you really contextualize things. And so I hope that these are conversations to adults who are watching, because it's not what we say,
right?
It's how we interact. So yes, we can have a sisterly conversation here, but if I'm someone else outside of this, and kids love to pull out the contradictions, but you said, but you didn't do. So we're all in this fishbowl. right now. So I am just thrilled and excited to have you come into our orbit and come into our space. And we just have a few minutes left. So I want to yield the floor back to you. Where can we find you? And so where can we find you? And what projects are you currently working on that we can share with our community?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the young girls that are a part of this and like making and creating real change. And I'm holding this space, and this is something like I'm going to carry with me this week and the rest of 2020 and beyond. So I just want to say I'm holding this, and I really, really appreciate, you bringing me on, and it's just learning about your work. It helps me push me to continue the work that I'm doing, And so you can find me on Facebook, Unbought Power, Instagram, Unbought Power, Twitter, Unbought Power, but also Rasha MK, RASHAMK on all social media. And I guess, I just want to say that never give up on your values. Understand your values. What does your support system look like? It's okay.
That's so important.
Right. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be exhausted. Not you as Black and brown girls don't have to carry the labor of educating our white, well-intended allies in how they can be better. This is real. So projects that I'm working on. So right now I'm in a consulting firm. I provide trainings in leadership, media, advocacy, grassroots 101, but also like I do political consulting. I politically consult for Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. I do fundraising for her. So something that I'm personally I sit on different boards like the Muslim Women's Organization and different boards, but something that I've been working on just the last few days is the Muslim Women's Organization of Florida. I sit on that board, and we launched Muslim Women for Black Power. We have state embedded call to actions, and we're going to be launching hopefully today the national campaign for Arabs for Black Lives Coalition. And basically we're naming how to uplift the Black community. But also, we talked about structurally, institutionally, interpersonally, the anti-Blackness that exists in Muslim spaces, anti-Blackness that exists in Arab spaces, although the majority of Muslims in this country are Black and African American, and we do have Afro-Arabs and Black Arabs, but the anti-Blackness is real, right? So how do we have an uncomfortable conversation that leads to action? So really creating curriculums and educating people what does solidarity look like, right? And that, anti-Blackness exists every day from our households, our communities, our mosques, our churches, our synagogues, all of that. How do we have these conversations? And also, how do we stand in solidarity? Because this is something we have to actively do on a daily basis. And that we, as, other people of color, non-Blacks, will not be free until our Black community is free. And so what does that really look like? So those are things that we are working on. So like, definitely look out for that. And, I'm happy to mentor, even though you right now mentor, anything y'all need, like I'm happy to do that. If you
yes,
want
ma'am.
things,
yes.
For it, so definitely let me know. And really, like, this work is my favorite work. It's the ones I look forward to, and it's the most important one.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it doesn't get any better than this. And just being around that youthful energy and interaction, it means so much, and they give you so much hope for the world to come. So I just want to thank you again, Rasha, for being here with us, sharing your space. Yes, we'll be reaching out to you. We have International Day of the Girl coming up in October. Looking for keynotes.
I would be honored.
Just saying. because it is so important that we continue this work, that we continue in solidarity.
Thank you so much.
And please forgive my technology. So please forgive the technology, but we enjoyed having you. And when links are available, we'll be sharing links. And for those of you who tuned in today, please grab a friend, reshare this post. We are the Power of Girlhood. You can log on to thepowerofgirlhood.org for more information about us and what we do, and how to get our program with your school, your Bible study, your mosque, your synagogue. We go everywhere because we truly do. We love all girls, and we know the only way to get there is to do it together. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my sister, thank you so much for being in this space with me. Thank you so much. Yeah. Have a great one.
You too.
All right.